Before I tell you what she did to my wife, I want you to understand who my wife is. Beverly has been cooking Christmas dinner since she was 19 years old. That was the year her mother got pneumonia 2 weeks before the holidays, and Beverly, the oldest of 4 kids, stepped in without being asked. She was a college sophomore. She didn't know how to roast a prime rib. She called her grandmother 3 times from the kitchen phone, holding a pen, writing down every word. The dinner turned out fine. Better than fine. Her grandmother cried at the table and said it tasted like home. That was 31 years ago. Since then, Beverly has hosted Christmas for our family every single year. It's not something we decided out loud. It just became true the way a lot of things become true in a marriage, gradually and then completely. She'd start planning in October, researching recipes, calling her sister to ask what the kids were eating now. She kept a folder on her laptop with notes going back a decade. Which year the au gratin potatoes were too salty. Which year her father asked for seconds on the brisket. Small things that mattered only to her, and because they mattered to her, they mattered to me. I want you to hold on to that picture. Because what I'm about to tell you only makes sense if you understand who Beverly is first. Drop your city in the comments and tell me what time it is where you are. I read every single one. My name is not important. What I'll tell you is that I'm 53. I work in commercial real estate, and I've been married to Beverly for 28 years. We have one son. His name is Owen. He's 26, and 2 years ago he married a woman named Tara. From the beginning, I tried with Tara. I really did. She's not a bad person. I want to be clear about that, because this story could easily make her sound like a villain, and I'm not sure that's entirely fair. What I think is true is that she's someone who grew up getting what she asked for, and she never quite learned the difference between asking and expecting. The first Christmas after Owen and Tara got married, they came to us. Beverly cooked. Tara complimented the meal, but spent most of the evening on her phone. That's fine, she's young. I didn't think much of it. The second Christmas, they came again. This time, Tara brought a bottle of wine and a dessert from a bakery. Gluten-free something. Beverly thanked her. The dinner was wonderful. Tara mentioned, around 9 o'clock, that next year they were thinking about hosting. Beverly said that sounded lovely. I should have paid more attention to that sentence. I should have noticed that she said hosting and not cooking. But I didn't. That brings us to this past October. Beverly was in the kitchen on a Saturday morning, going through her Christmas folder. I was at the table with coffee, reading something on my phone. She had a notepad out and was writing down ideas. Turkey or prime rib this year, she was saying more to herself than to me. Maybe both. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tara. Beverly read it. Then she read it again. Then she set the phone face down on the table and was quiet for a moment. I said, "Everything okay?" She picked up the phone and handed it to me. The text was long. That was the first thing I noticed. It wasn't a quick message. It had clearly been thought about and written with some intention. It began with Tara explaining that she and Owen had been talking, and since they had more space in their house now, they'd moved into a 4-bedroom in the suburbs over the summer. They thought it made sense for them to host Christmas this year. I said, "That's nice." Beverly looked at me. "Keep reading." I kept reading. The second paragraph was a list. Not a suggestion of dishes. A list. Single-spaced. Numbered. 14 items long. I'll walk you through it, because I think the details matter here. Roast prime rib, full standing rib roast, enough for 27 people. Yorkshire pudding, from scratch. Garlic mashed potatoes, homemade, no instant. Honey glazed carrots, roasted Brussels sprouts with bacon. Green bean casserole, from scratch, not the canned soup version. Creamed spinach. Dinner rolls, homemade. Gravy from the drippings, no packet gravy. A cheese board with at least 4 varieties. Shrimp cocktail with homemade cocktail sauce. 2 pies, pecan and apple, both from scratch. A Yule log cake. Sparkling cider for the kids. At the bottom of the list, Tara had written, "Mom, you're so much better at this than anyone. I want our guests to be blown away. Could you start on the pies and the rolls a couple days before so you're not overwhelmed on the day? We'd love for you to arrive around 8 a.m. on the 25th to get everything going." Dinner's at 5, we're so excited. 27 people. She wanted Beverly to cook for 27 people. All 14 items. From scratch. Pies and rolls prepared days in advance. Arrive at 8 in the morning, dinner at 5, and she'd written it like a favor. I put the phone down. I looked at my wife. Beverly had a very particular expression on her face. It wasn't anger, it wasn't hurt, exactly. It was something more like the look you get when you finally understand, something you'd been half aware of for a long time. Like a sentence you'd been mispronouncing your whole life and someone finally corrects you. And the correction is a little embarrassing and a little freeing at the same time. She said quietly, "Did she ask me or did she assign me?" I didn't answer, because we both already knew. I told Beverly I'd handle it. She said she didn't want me to make it into a bigger thing than it needed to be. We went back and forth on that for a few days, which is how things go in our house. Beverly absorbs. I react. Neither of us is entirely right. Eventually I called Owen. He answered on the second ring, the way he always does, and I could hear the TV on in the background. I told him his mother and I had gotten Tara's text, and that we had some thoughts about it. He said, "Yeah, Tara mentioned she sent that. Is something wrong?" I said, "Owen, 14 items for 27 people is a lot to ask of one person. Your mother is 60 years old." There was a pause. Then he said, "Dad, she loves cooking. This is what she does." I said, "What she does is cook for our family because she wants to, not because she's been assigned a catering order." Another pause, longer this time. He said, "I think you're making this into something it isn't. Tara just wants the food to be good. You know how mom's cooking is." I said, "I do know how her cooking is, Owen. That's exactly the point." He said he'd talk to Tara. I said that would be a good idea. We hung up. 3 days passed. No word from Tara, no revised plan, no acknowledgement that anything had been said at all. Then Beverly got a follow-up text. It wasn't an apology. It was Tara saying she'd made a few adjustments. She was taking the cheese board off Beverly's list because she'd order that from a place nearby. 13 items now instead of 14. Just wanted Beverly to know. Beverly showed me the text without saying anything. I sat with that for a moment, and then something settled in me. Not anger, not anymore, just clarity. I've been married to Beverly for 28 years. In those 28 years, she has never, not once, asked for anything that wasn't reasonable. She makes things easy for people. She steps in before she's asked. She remembers things. She shows up. I have watched this woman give and give and give, in ways that were so quiet and consistent, that the people around her started to see it as a given instead of a gift. I was not going to let the Christmas she'd been planning in her head since October become a 13-item unpaid catering shift. I didn't say anything to Beverly right away. I waited until I had a plan. The following week, I called my college friend Dwight. Dwight and his wife Renee have a place in Asheville, North Carolina, and every year around the holidays they try to get us out there, but something always comes up. I called him on a Tuesday afternoon from my car, the parking garage after work. He answered, and I said, "Are you serious about Asheville this year?" He said, "Are you serious about coming?" I said, "What are you doing Christmas week?" He said, "Nothing I wouldn't cancel." I told him we were in. That night I booked 2 flights. Asheville Regional Airport, departing December 23rd, returning December 28th. I booked us a room at a small inn Renee had mentioned years ago, up in the hills, with a fireplace in every room. I paid for it in full. Then I sat with it for one more night, just to make sure. The next morning I was sure. I told Beverly over breakfast. I slid the confirmation email across the table and let her read it. She looked up at me. "When did you do this?" "Last night." "You already booked it?" "I already booked it." She looked back down at the paper. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Owen's going to be upset." I said, "He might be." She said, "Tara's going to be furious." I said, "She might be." Beverly looked out the window for a moment. The yard was gray, mid-November, the oak tree losing the last of its leaves. She said, "I was going to make the prime rib this year." I said, "You can make it in Asheville." She laughed. "Just a small one, but a real one." Then she looked at me and said, "Okay, just that, okay." 31 years of Christmas dinners, and she let it go with one word. That's Beverly. We did not call Owen. We did not call Tara. Beverly texted Owen 4 days before we left, not to explain, not to argue, just to tell him she hoped he had a wonderful Christmas and that we loved him. He texted back a thumbs-up emoji. That told me everything I needed to know about where his head was. The morning of the 23rd, we were at the airport by 5:30. Beverly had a carry-on, a paperback she'd been meaning to read since July, and a small bag of snacks she'd packed the night before. She was wearing the blue scarf I gave her for her birthday. She looked lighter than she'd looked in months. I want to tell you about the flight, because I think it matters. We were in our seats, and Beverly was looking out the window as the plane taxied, and she said something I've been thinking about ever since. She said, "I keep waiting to feel guilty." I said, "Do you?" She said, "No, and I think that's the thing." I didn't say anything. She went back to her book. I watched the tarmac go by. Asheville in late December is something. If you've never been, it's tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains, and even without snow, it's the kind of place that slows your breathing down. Dwight and Renee picked us up from the airport in his truck, and we spent the drive in from the airport talking about nothing important. A restaurant they wanted to take us to. A hike Renee thought Beverly might like. The fact that Dwight had learned to make biscuits from scratch and was unreasonably proud of it. Beverly fell asleep in the back seat, just like that, out, the way you sleep when something's been lifted. The inn was exactly what Renee had described: stone fireplace, wooden beams, heavy blankets. We had dinner that night in a small restaurant downtown, a place with exposed brick and a menu that changed weekly, and Beverly ordered the short rib and said it was the best thing she'd eaten in years. Dwight told a story about a hiking disaster from the summer. Renee kept refilling Beverly's wine glass. We were there until nearly 10 o'clock. December 24th, we slept in. I don't remember the last time Beverly slept past 7. She slept until 9:15. I watched her sleep and felt something I don't have a good word for. Relief, maybe. Or just love, in its quieter form. We spent Christmas Eve walking through the River Arts District, stopping into studios, looking at things. Beverly found a small ceramic bowl, deep blue, that she stood looking at for a long time. I bought it while she was looking at something else in the next room. That night, the four of us cooked together in the inn's shared kitchen. Dwight made his biscuits, which were actually excellent. Renee made a soup. Beverly and I made a pasta with a slow-cooked bolognese, and we opened a bottle of wine someone had given Dwight for his birthday, and we sat around the table until midnight. Beverly reached across the table at one point and squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Christmas morning, the inn left fruit and pastries outside our door at 7. We ate in bed with the fireplace going. Beverly called her sister. I called my brother. At some point, Beverly said, "I wonder how it's going over there." And she said it without any bitterness, just genuine wondering, and then she went back to her book. At 4:47 in the afternoon on Christmas Day, I know the exact time because I was looking at my phone when it came through. Beverly's phone rang. It was Tara. Beverly looked at the phone. She looked at me. She let it ring 4 times. Then she answered and put it on speaker. Tara's voice was tight. Not yelling, but tight, the way someone's voice gets when they're trying to control something and not quite managing it. She said, "Beverly, I've been trying to reach Owen, and he's running around, and I need to know if you have the recipe for the gravy, like the one you make from the drippings. We did the prime rib, but the gravy didn't come out right, and everyone's going to be sitting down in 10 minutes, and She stopped herself. Then she said, "Where are you? Are you at home?" Beverly said, "No, honey, we're in North Carolina. We're with friends for the holiday." Silence. Then Tara said, What? You're not coming?" Beverly said, "Owen knew we had other plans. I sent him a message last week." More silence. Tara said, "He didn't. I didn't know." And then her voice shifted, went quieter, and underneath the tightness I could hear something else. Something that might have been the first real moment of reckoning she'd had all day. She said, "I thought you were coming to help." And Beverly said very gently, "I know, just that." Not unkind, not triumphant, just honest. Then she said, "Tara, for a prime rib gravy, you're going to want to skim most of the fat from the drippings, but not all of it. Maybe 2 tablespoons left in the pan. Deglaze with a cup of red wine and let it reduce by half. Then add beef broth, about 2 cups. Let it simmer. Season at the end, not the beginning. You have time." Tara was quiet for a moment, then she said, "Okay." Beverly said, "You're going to be fine. Merry Christmas, honey," and she hung up. The room was very still. Then Dwight, who had been pretending to read a magazine on the other side of the room, said without looking up, "The red wine reduction was a nice touch," and we all started laughing. Beverly laughed the hardest. She put her face in her hands and laughed the way you only can when you've been carrying something for a long time and you've finally, completely, let it go. Owen texted that night, not to Beverly, to me. It said, "I talked to Tara tonight. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry, Dad. Merry Christmas." I typed back, "Merry Christmas, son. We love you. Let's talk after the new year." He said, "Yeah, I think we should." The next morning, Beverly and I walked a trail Renee had told us about, up into the hills. It was cold and clear, the kind of winter morning where the sky is so blue it almost looks fake. We walked without talking much. At one point we came out above the tree line, and you could see the mountains in every direction. Layer after layer of them, going blue and pale toward the horizon. Beverly stopped and looked at it for a long time. She said, We should have done this years ago, I said. We're doing it now. She nodded. We kept walking. We flew home on the 28th. The house was quiet when we came in. Beverly put her bag down in the entryway and went to the kitchen and made us tea, the same way she does every night, the same green mugs, the same 2 spoons of honey in hers. She set mine on the counter and said, I think next Christmas we should try New Mexico. I said Santa Fe, she said. I was thinking Taos. I said then Taos it is. She picked up her mug and smiled, and it was the same smile she had 31 years ago when her grandmother cried at the table, that small, quiet, this is enough smile. We had that conversation in January when Owen and Tara came to dinner. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a conversation. A real one, the kind that's a little uncomfortable and necessary and long overdue. Owen did most of the talking. He said he'd been passive in ways he wasn't proud of. He said he'd let things happen that he should have spoken up about. Tara said she hadn't understood what she was asking until she'd tried to do it herself. And even then, she said, she'd only managed 7 of the 14 items, and the house was chaos by 3 o'clock. Beverly listened. She didn't offer absolution quickly. She let the silence sit. And then she said she appreciated them saying so, and that she'd needed to hear it. What she didn't say, but what I think is true, is that she'd already forgiven them somewhere between the mountain trail and the inn's stone fireplace. That's also Beverly. Not everyone gets a wife like that. I know that. I think about it more now than I used to. If you've ever been the one who shows, who cooks, who plans, who makes things work, who gets handed the list instead of the gratitude, I hope you hear this. You're allowed to book the flight. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to wait until someone finally asks you to stop. You can just go. Tell me in the comments if you've been there. Tell me what you did, and if you haven't, tell me where you're watching from. I'll be reading.